It meant you stayed 1,000 feet away from clouds, but you stayed in the clear, and you were supposed to be VFR, looking around for traffic.
So, at Daggett, he asked for 1,000 on top. That's all fine. So where does that get him?
His next report is from Mojave at 9:59.
TWA-2, passing Lake Mojave, 1,000 on top at 21,000. Estimate Painted Desert at 10:31.
Half an hour after requesting 1,000 on top, Gandhi reports his actual altitude.
21,000 feet. Now they're both there.
They could fly at any altitude they wanted as long as it was 1,000 feet separation from those clouds. So they took 1,000 on top and then selected to fly at 21,000 feet.
Investigators now understand how the TWA flight ended up at the same altitude as United 718. As for why both planes diverted from their scheduled routes at the same time...
Damn! What's he doing there? Pull up! Pull up!
The answer is the crash site itself. An awe-inspiring natural wonder.
Let's give him a look, shall we?
Hi, Captain.
It was common of making a few turns over the Grand Canyon to show people the Grand Canyon. I mean, that happened every flight because the Grand Canyon is such a spectacular sight.
Wonderful sights to see way down below. The Grand Canyon, for instance, one of the 7 wonders of the world.
Sightseeing in terms of what you could show to the passengers was something that really lit up the senior flight crew. I can actually show you something that nobody else can show you. I can dazzle you with things that you, as an ordinary human being who doesn't fly, would never see.
Just keep your eyes peeled and you'll get a spectacular view no matter where you're sitting. How are we doing on your side, Bob?
Thunderhead about 5 miles south. We're clear of it.
Okie dokie. We've got some room.
You were free to, if you wanted, deviate a little bit for sightseeing. That you could. It wasn't dangerous. Nothing dangerous about him.
Damn!
But on June the 30th, 1956, it proves fatal.
God!
Jack Parshall needs to find out how such a common practice killed 128 people.
From the very beginning of aviation, we had the concept of see and avoid, or see and be seen. The responsibility for separation of aircraft was still the pilot's responsibility.
Parshall knows that United hit TWA on the right side, coming from behind. One of the pilots failed to see and avoid. Parshall needs to figure out which one.
What's he doing there?
The answer will lead to sweeping changes in the rules governing commercial aviation.
All right, let's see what Captain Shirley can see out there.
Using a scale model of the DC-7 cockpit and airspeed estimates for both planes, Parshall tries to calculate the distance at which the United pilots could have first spotted the constellation.
What were the views of the flight crew members from each one of the aircraft? Could they have seen each other? Did they try and avoid each other?
So if they ended up like this, let's go back a couple of minutes.
Those are the kinds of things that that investigator in charge, I'm sure, was asking himself and getting his team together to try and deduce from the evidence.
I'm gonna need you over there.
Investigators begin to suspect that there may be serious problems with the whole idea of see and avoid.
Hey, keep going. Keep going.
Let me tell you one of the dirty little truths of commercial aviation from the 50s all the way to now. We have been under see and avoid, but you can't see in most cases, even to avoid. And that's because the windows are very small.
All right, keep going. A little bit further. Keep going. Stop. Come back half a step. Right there. That's where Shirley would have first seen the Connie.
Since the DC-7 was behind the constellation, it was Captain Shirley's responsibility to avoid it.
Oh, God! Bank, bank, bank! Come on, baby, come on!
Parshall wants to find out if he had enough time to do that.
There are basic rules, and those basic rules are to Indeed, if you see an impending situation, the overtaking aircraft will give way to the aircraft in front.
The 6 pilots in both planes were preoccupied with the demanding job of flying their aircraft.
In a piston plane, you had the throttles, you had the propeller RPM, to adjust your RPM.
The engines sound good, Mr. Fiore. How are the temps?
Yeah, hold steady, Skipper. Still running a little, Rich.
There's really a lot more to do flying a piston airplane.
That'd be 53 miles.
Parshall's test shows that in theory the Constellation would have been visible to the DC-7 crew when it was 85 kilometers or 53 miles away. The numbers suggest that Captain Shirley had 2 full minutes to avoid a collision. That's more than enough time to safely change course.
Damn! Oh, God! Come on, baby, come on!
Parshall needs to know why that didn't happen. The answer becomes clear when he reviews the radio recordings.
Dispatch, TWA-2. We've got a little bit of weather here we want to get on top of.
Be a good man and ask Salt Lake to clear us to 21,000.
On June the 30th, the skies over Arizona were not clear.
Folks, we got a bit of weather over the canyon, so it could get a bit bumpy. Nothing to worry about. How are we doing on your side, Bob?
Thunderhead about 5 miles south. We're clear.
Okie dokie. You've got some room.
They were flying, I hate to say fat, dumb, and happy, but in effect that's a phrase we use when you think everything's copacetic.
When he factors cloud cover into the equation, Parshall reaches a stunning conclusion. The crew of Flight 718 had just seconds to recognize and avoid the plane ahead of them.
Boom.
The collision was unavoidable.
You have seconds to respond, to identify, to develop or formulate a evasive maneuver and execute it, and for the aircraft to respond to any control inputs that you put in there.
There was no indication in the heads of any of the pilots on either of those 2 flight decks that they were in proximity of anybody else in a dangerous way until they came around a cloud and all of a sudden the DC-7 crew has a Connie right in their face. And the Connie crew, I'm sure that they, to the moment of death, had no idea whatever hit them.
When Jack Parshall sits down to report his findings, he faces intense pressure. The reputation of an industry hinges on what he has to say.
We're really there to try and prevent the next accident, a recurrence of similar circumstances that set up an accident. But certainly with the high death toll, 128 people died that day, 2 major airlines of America running into each other, there was a call to find out who was guilty, who was to blame.
The obvious conclusion is that the pilots were to blame.
That's a no-go on 21,000. United 718 is there.
A lot of people want to lay the blame on TWA's captain, Jack Gandy.
Roger that. By Salt Lake, I'm going to VFR and 1,000 on top.
It was Gandy's decision to switch altitudes that put his plane in the path of United 718. But a strict interpretation of the rules would put the blame on United pilot, Captain Bob Shirley.
Damn! What's he doing there?
In a perfectly sterile analysis of this, the overtaking aircraft, the one who's overtaking the other aircraft, has the legal responsibility of avoiding the aircraft they're overtaking.
Right there.
But Parshall's calculations have shown there was no way for Captain Shirley to avoid the collision.
I think it's not only fair to say that these 2 crews were following the rules and doing everything the way that they understood it should be done.
21,000 feet. Now they're both there.
But that this was the way society in aviation viewed the right way to do it at the time.
There is one last possible culprit. The air traffic controller, who told TWA about the United flight, but didn't advise the DC-7 crew about the Constellation.
Maintain at least 1,000 on top. Advise TWA-2 his traffic is United 718.
There was an attempt to throw blame in all directions. Very human, very understandable. By the same token, when it came to blame put on the air traffic controllers, it was very misplaced.
With no radar coverage, air traffic controllers could not visually track flights. It was impossible for them to advise every company dispatcher on the precise location of every plane in the sky.
I think if we try and pin the issue down to who was to blame, we're probably looking at this accident in an inappropriate way.
It has become clear to Parshall that no one person is to blame for the mid-air collision.
Those two aircraft were put in the proximity of each other by the rules and the regulations.
The real cause of the crash is something much bigger, something that goes to the very heart of aviation in America. Jack Parshall concludes that blame for the Grand Canyon disaster lies not with the pilots, not with the controllers, but with a completely inadequate air traffic control system.
The subtext in that report had to be very delicately placed in front of the Congress and the American public, but the subtext is very clear, and that is, you know, it's not a matter of the system being broken. Guys, we don't have a system. This is a great non-system of air traffic control, and until we get a handle on that, we are not going to be able to rise to the level of assurance of separation in any degree that the public is obviously expecting.
The Grand Canyon crash and Jack Parshall's report provoked dramatic changes in American aviation.
As a result of the event in the Grand Canyon, something new was born. There was a new awareness to the public's right, desire, and interest in air travel. And that was fostered by lots of very innovative designs in traffic collision avoidance systems that are present in today's environment.
The main outcome of the Grand Canyon collision is that the United States now has a nationwide radar system. Controllers can now track the movements of planes in even the most remote parts of the country.
The only way you're going to assure that this will never happen again is if you've got somebody positively controlling whoever's up there to where they cannot get too close to each other. They can't change altitudes at the right time. You can't mix the traffic. And that meant radar coverage across the entirety of the country.
Despite all the advances, air traffic controllers still face challenges. More planes in the sky, flying faster and higher than ever before. And though extremely rare, mid-air collisions still do occur. In response, aviation officials are developing a system that could transform air traffic control in America. The Next Generation Air Transportation System, or NextGen, will use GPS satellites to give pilots the precise location of the traffic around them. By the year 2020, pilots will know exactly how close they are to all other aircraft, without air traffic controllers having to tell them.
Hopefully the next generation of air traffic control will look back on that event of the Grand Canyon, and we'll try and get ahead of it before such another tragedy does recur.
As the era of romantic air travel fades into history, the lessons learned from the Grand Canyon disaster remain. Flying can always be made safer.
I'm reminded constantly, anytime I study an older accident, of something that was said by George Santayana in 1917, an American philosopher who said those wonderful words, "He who cannot remember the past is condemned to repeat it."